If you're from here, it's just she doesn't like the Are you all set?
Call the meeting to order. Please join me. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Adjustments to the agenda.
Yes, we have a few. Under 7 new business at an athletic director position. Candidate. Under D, add Allie Euler, English, Nokomis Regional High School. Asia Walling, 8th grade, DLA, Nokomis Regional Middle School. Nominations, add Sherry Beeland as a special ed teacher at Nokomis Regional High School, and Denise Wilbur, special ed teacher at Nokomis Regional High. Staff appointments. It's informational. It's under G. Boys varsity soccer, Brandon Fuller. A Whitney guy for JV field hockey, and Hanning was the football quarterback. Andrew Hanning as the assistant football coach. And those are nominations.
Anything else?
Yeah. You have a piece of paper in front of you that is DOE and the COMAS diploma requirements. That will be under I on the agenda. And Mary and I will have a little discussion about why that's in front of you, and that would be an action item. If we can, we've got a lot to do tonight, and that is a late addition, but it's also a timely addition due to graduation coming up. That would be the end of the adjustments.
Okay. Approval of minutes of April 12th, 2022.
So moved.
Any adjustments to those to those minutes? Thank you. Second.
Yeah.
Any adjustments or corrections? All in favor of approval of the minutes? Any opposed? Motion carries. And we go to public comment. Any members of the public wish to make a comment? All right, seeing none. The administrative communications we have in here. Couple of things that I would call your attention to right off the bat. Adult education, their graduation is Thursday, June 2nd at 7. And this is always kind of a really cool moment because some of the folks are ones that dropped out or have struggled academically. They come back to this and they are now completing that diploma and being successful, and it's really kind of a good chance to see that there is life on that side of it. Things I noticed, and it always surprises me, is that they're starting kindergarten screening already. So it's next year is already ramping up. So, Mike, you want to add anything to that?
Not to the administrative communications. My report.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll do mine really quickly because, like I said, there's a lot going on tonight, and we want to get to it. I will say that I came in here yesterday and watched the comedy of errors that the high school did. I was lucky. I got a chance to come in, and they said their 8th grade was coming in here to watch it, and I hadn't got a chance to see that play. It was really cool. To have the 8th grade watch those high school kids do that play. It was really neat and interesting. So if you didn't get a chance to see it, I'm sure it's out there in the World Wide Web somewhere. The other thing was that in my report, I'll also get on this really quickly, but I went up to Tri-County for the honors induction ceremony, and we were very, very well represented from the COMAS, up there. One of our students got a second-year award, so that was really neat to see that induction ceremony. Other than that, everything else I will talk about because I've been involved in a lot lately.
I will add on that I was at the Eastern Maine Community College open house a couple of weeks ago, and we had a bus of students from the COMAS that came up, and they seemed interested, and there's, of course, a lot of buzz right now with the free college tuition at the community colleges. Keep in mind, it's it's not really focused on the liberal studies stuff. It's for workforce development, for becoming an electrician or a plumber or an automotive tech or a firefighter or an EMT or any of those. But, you know, remind the people you know that it's there. All right, report of special committees, budget and finance.
We've been busy. We've had a couple of meetings since the last time we spoke, and on April 25th and May 9th. We did some pairing of the budget, and we are pleased to present a budget to the entire board for your blessing. And instead of going over the budget page by page, we've chosen several pages to go over and then open it up for any questions that anybody has. So Joe, if you would like to present those 2 or 3 pages. Oh, I did. I looked and I didn't see it.
Well, I think there's one agenda didn't come out. This is got to.
Oh, all right. Well, wait.
All right. So, building committee had no meeting, but we have been doing pre-build.
We had a pre-build meeting over at Somerset last Thursday. We're going to let the kids finish up their testing, and then Bowman Builders will start to dig out and excavate for the water system over there. Main water was there, and also people who tested the drinking water was there, along with the electrician. So it was a good meeting. I think they're ready to go. I think they ordered a lot of equipment, and just as soon as we can stay out of Ellen's way as far as finishing up the rate testing, we'll be going with that. It's exciting to finally see that one started. We're not going to have a meeting this month because we've got to finish up negotiations, and Paul, Mark, me, and Jason, we're all on that committee. We really need to get it done as far as negotiations go. And I talked to Alicia, other than probably the project over at Somerset, there isn't a whole lot going on in her life. We can continue to give you updates at the board level.
Education committee.
Yeah, I'll try to keep this quick because I sound like this. The notes are in the edited board packet that Evelyn sent out. We had 2 primary areas of focus at the last education committee meeting. The first one was a report from PBCAP about the pre-K program. You can see in the notes some of the numbers and efficacy that they showed. A pretty successful program. We had a joint presentation by KBCAP and Ellen was there as well, Mr. Burnett. So if anybody has any questions about any of the statistics or numbers or efficacy of the program that is not in the notes, let me know. And then we actually had a fairly spirited but civil discussion about social media, which was a nice change. And it was originally we had kind of brought this to the administration's attention because there have been a lot of studies released about the damage that social media is doing to young people, and then a lot of us have anecdotal evidence from our own kids and from their friends. So we essentially just wanted to have a conversation about what kinds of things the district is doing to educate the students and what kinds of issues the administration and teachers are dealing with. It was basically, we got the sense, I think the overall sense was that it kind of varies depending on the age group. The youngest students in middle school are to use Mrs. Brown's words, more compliant, so they don't seem to have trouble following the classroom rules around personal phone usage, personal device usage. 7th and 8th graders are a real struggle, and then it tends to get a little bit better in high school. Some of that is due to some of the steps that Mary has tried to help institute in classrooms where there's a designated spot where students can charge their devices, check them at a certain time, etc. In the middle school, they're asked to leave their devices in the locker. We can go into a lot of detail, but there was a marked difference in how students are able to use and staff is able to regulate district-owned devices versus personal devices. Obviously, there was a difference in that, and that seems to be where the trouble is. I would say that we ended the discussion without much of a decision or guidance, but that Mrs. Netto said she was actually going to be focusing on this a little more heavily at the beginning of the coming school year, particularly around education for the students, and trying to make sure that all of the staff, all of the classrooms and staff have these cell phone islands, she called them, so that it's consistent from one room to another. And Mrs. Brown was going to review the district's policies around acceptable use and see if there was anything that she could suggest to the board that would help her meet some of the needs that she and her staff have. But I expect that this conversation is going to be ongoing and will probably come back at some point in the fall, I would imagine, after the school year starts again. And that's it for the last meeting. The next one we're actually going to hear, hopefully everybody at this point has reviewed the budget, but there's a position in there in the middle school for the guidance counselor. In the next education committee meeting, we've asked Mrs. Brown and some of her staff to come in and talk about some of the issues that are leading to that, the need for that. And that's it for now.
Any questions for Ryan? All right, policy.
Policy committee did meet, as you can see on your agenda and in your packet. We don't have any policies for first reading. We have 3 policies listed for second reading that will require action tonight. And in the interest of time and getting to other agenda items, I will offer them to you as a group for you. It's our second reading of these policies again. Do you have questions on them? No?
I'll entertain a motion to approve them.
So,
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those, go ahead, Paul.
That's policy committee meetings from April 26, right?
Yep.
I'm seeing it here. Does it say new policy, student dress code? Is that one of the ones we're doing on? But we're going to do start a new policy for that?
No, we rarely start a new policy. That was reviewed at the April meeting, but it's not in your packet for review tonight. It will come for first and second reading, as all others do. Any comments or questions on these policies here in front of us?
Seeing none, all those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries. All right, Transportation Committee and no meeting. Anything new on the transportation side of this?
No. Dean, did you hear from parents that the bus runs are a little bit late? Yes, they are. A couple of them are doubled up. A couple of them got 8th graders the other day. But Dean's working as hard as possible again to put all the buses on the road every day. He's dropped about 3 or 4 bus drivers this week. We did approve the buses through the DOE. Joe did his work on that today, so we've got those approved for this year. And that's about it. Yeah, Tri-County, our sole purpose was to go up for the induction ceremony, and like I said, or 15, most of them were almost graduates from all these programs, culinary, with culinary service dinner that night. It was wonderful. We were actually just go up there and tour that facility. It's definitely worth doing. And all the programs, we had kids inducted into that, and there were like 5 or 6 tours. I wish I could remember them. They're a little different from the National Honor Society, but it's a Technical Honor Society that they go into. I think it's like the 2nd or 3rd year that they've done that program and that induction. And then we voted on the budget. And we didn't quite have a quorum, but we knew that Dexter was going to be voted on their budget. And then the Tri-County budget is a lot more closely connected to the Dexter budget. So that passed. In our minds, it's passed, and it's what lower than it was last year, because they received more state funding. And remember that funding we won't discuss tonight either, because that funding, well, other than the local allocation, because that's passed through. The money gets sent right from the DOE to Tri-County. So, Mr. and I had a great opportunity to be up there for that.
Negotiations.
We've had 4 meetings since our last school board meeting, with another one planned for tomorrow night, and we continue to go back and forth making some progress.
And nothing on extracurricular or pandemic costs. No old business, and to the 2022-23 school calendar.
Yeah, this was sent out to you, and talking at Tri-County and through the region. We feel if we can start on the 31st together, and we have the December date before Christmas kind of in line, we were all set. And then so after that, we took a look at it in line with our calendar this year, with making sure that we reduce the workshop days and comp days down to 5 and 2, and the first 2 workshop days are new teachers that come in, and was part of the contract. And I will look we have not negotiated Juneteenth into the collective bargaining agreement. I know some people, when I talk to superintendents, they are discussing that, but I will be very careful to do some creative problem solving to make sure that we stay away from Juneteenth. If maybe we do a remote day. I mean, we haven't used 5 plastic. We have not used 5 snow days in quite some time. So I know that was something we haven't dealt with.
Are there 5 snow days built into this for us to use and then take back at the end?
Yep.
Thank you.
All right, so you need so this requires a motion to approve the calendar.
Move.
Second.
Veronica.
All right, so any discussion on the calendar? Seeing none. Those in favor of approving the calendar as presented? Those opposed?
Okay.
One opposed, motion carries. All right, district physical therapist.
Okay, so this is kind of a parallel position to when we went and picked up our own BCBA, some of the board members have been around the board for a little while. What we do is in the past, we had contracted services for our BCBA, and we seem to get a new one from people that we contracted with each year. And there was kind of this delay in picking up the kids. They always have to study the files and those types of things. So this is along those same lines that we contract this service, at least on some level. And what's happening is that, like let's say we're paying $50 an hour to contract that service. We go out to a new, we're going through the situation that we're going through right now. It's going to be $80 an hour next year. So we don't feel that, we feel like it's not increasing the budget at all, and I would assume it would even be a little bit lower if we're doing this on our own. Granted, Joe's going to knock on the table and say, well, we're going to pay benefits and that type of thing. That's going to be our employee, and I completely get that. But it's again also that person who is going to know our kids, year in and year out. Hopefully, can do some summer programming with our kids, the same kids, so they get to know the kids. So there isn't that lag in the programming. And this is an attempt. This is to put the ad out there and have you guys understand the thought and theory behind it, instead of saying, well, wait a minute, why are we doing this? So we're going to try to go out with our own. It won't be a new position. It will be reallocating contracted services amount of money try to get somebody to do it a little less, I'm confident it's going to be less, and have our own person. And it's kind of like we have our own speech people, now we have our own BCBA. So I just wanted to make sure that if there's any other questions, we can answer those when you see it out there. And hopefully we'll get somebody. I mean, I think there's somebody who may be interested. No promises made, but it would be nice to have our own person instead of contracted service.
So what you need is a motion to approve the position.
To motion to, well, we already have positions, Stella? We don't, so we don't have our own, so this would be a new, yeah, so this is a new position to approve a physical therapist.
And then you would have to go out and find one.
Yeah, we can get you the job description through policy, and it's a typical job description for a physical therapist.
Is there a large call for this in our school district? Is that what we're looking for?
Yeah, we have, you know, the number of kids, to put you on the spot, some of it, or even Karen, you know, what's our service need for our physical therapist? Full-time, right?
22 roughly.
22 students, which would be a full-time position throughout the day, throughout the district. Doesn't sound like a lot of kids, but they have to see multiple times, and so it's in their IP for a certain amount of time.
Jen?
If you don't find somebody for this position, we can go back to the contract.
We can go back to the contract service. Unfortunately, yeah, we won't get more service for the amount of money we get. We won't lose.
All.
Is that approximately 22 just for July?
Yep.
Where would that person's office be based out of?
Somewhere in a central location so that we can get out to the building of school and do the search and find out.
Yet to be determined.
Anyone else? I guess to start with, I would entertain a motion to approve hiring our own physical therapist.
So moved.
Second by Ron. All right, any further discussion, Brian?
You're saying this is budget neutral because we're going to use the contracted services approved amount.
Right, it could be even lower than that amount that we put in there.
Okay, thank you.
Paul?
So this is an obligation.
In an IEP, you would have the services provided, OT, PT, speech.
And through IEPs
Yeah,
Even with benefits?
yes. Yes.
and the approval, we're not setting on a cost for this. I know Brian says it's neutral, but
So I would bring back a person and show you what the salary is, and we'll have a look at the job description. Should have brought that with you, but I guess it's a typical job description for this.
wouldn't it hinge on our approval with whether you're going to have to pay $250,000 per person, or?
I wouldn't be bringing it to you if it was going to be $250,000.
Services, I kind of think we're being asked to approve something without a cost tied to it. I know they're not cheap, but
It's not a cheap service.
how much do we spend this year?
What do we have in the budget for speech therapy? Roughly.
I don't have that number off the top of my head, unfortunately.
I didn't agree.
Very detailed.
I want to see 80,000, something like that, 60 to 80. I can get you the savings. You don't see that. I don't see that this is going to be a savings if we find this person or not. If we can't, I feel like we'll stay with contract services if we're going to pay $80,000. I think the whole idea was getting somebody on our own and also being a little more cost effective.
And
Well, no, so, I mean, they're contracted now. Are they contracted at 40 hours now?
Contracted. I can't answer that question. Do you know how many hours I'm contracting with 22 right now? We're contracting a full-time person. Do you know, Karen?
And are we, and this would be a full-time position?
I guess it's only 4 days a week. But we contract.
Contract 40 days, 4 days, 4 days.
And they're going to be offered full benefits, as same as a staff working 5 days a week. And I think you probably all want to see numbers, maybe, is my guess.
Okay.
Maybe I misunderstood, but I thought you were saying that we contract 4 days a week, that this person's going to be full-time.
This would be full-time. We are approving them to go look for a person. At that point, that person comes back to us, and then we see numbers and we compare the contracted services to an item person.
And then you're going to negotiate with them whether they want to do a contract or
It would be on a contract like our, if some people that are on a contract.
Sure, right.
Yeah.
And as Jenny said, if we get that information and prefer to stick with the contract, we still have that option.
Right, this is just a.
This approval would give us that information
for
for that meeting.
Research this.
Yep.
Like we did with the BCBA, because remember we was rough, you don't remember?
No, I know how.
We did it with the BCBA, we couldn't find some, I think we couldn't find somebody, so we stayed on it, and we found somebody, and they left and went to Florida, and now we're back having our own, but it was the exact same process, we try to see, provide people, if we can't, we're gonna go on contract service, we've got to provide these services, but we want to make it not at $80 an hour, we want to make it at, hopefully that's savings.
We also did it with the intern.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't pan out, we won't go any further, and come back to you saying, we still have contract services at X.
But where's your line in the sand going to be for wages? I mean,
Not more than contract service.
Right. But whereas if it's a contracted service, we don't pay their benefits.
No, but we also control who it is, and we don't control what they can't go to 80 to 120 to.
And the benefits are unknown right now because of, are they going to have a family, are they going to have one, or 1 plus 1, all that stuff, right?
Yeah, the teacher contract, so we're not going to give a full family, and do whatever we offer.
They fall under the teacher's contract,
Benefits.
so it'd be 1 plus 1, or 4
1
1.
plus 1, they pay for the full family.
That's the percentage the teachers have. So that's an added cost. That would be taken into account when we follow through with this complete process?
Yes, we're not going to have salary and benefits, but more than it would be for contracted services, because we only have a fixed amount for
The budget.
the budget. Trying to get your person on your own staff, our staff, at a cheaper amount of money, if it's all possible. It's not possible when there's a state contracted services, and we won't be able to predict what, we'll have to ask each year what that's going to be, and if it continues to increase, we'll just have to.
I just going back to what Mike just said. So when you said, did you say, and I may have misheard, did you say that if it's a contracted position that we don't choose, you don't choose, whomever doesn't choose who it is? Are you contracting through an agency or, oh, you are?
We go through an agency, yeah, we don't.
And is there something that says you have to do that?
But we have to,
Are you-
provide the services if we don't have a person on staff.
I know, I mean, for contracting purposes, like you,
Oh, can we go out and
Yeah, 'cause that's-
contract, like
yeah.
an hourly rate?
other places do
with
that
somebody
too.
else with no benefit?
You'd have higher pay and no benefits. I was just wondering why in particular it was through an agency, that's all.
That's a good question.
Yeah, I just-
Well, part of that, and I can only remember from like the BCBA, by contracting with the agency, we don't have to pay the benefits because the agency does.
And I don't know.
But we pay a higher rate, which the person actually doesn't get.
Yes, I know how this works. I'm very
Yeah.
familiar with this, and
Right.
contracting up for nursing. And I'm asking if, in my world, we can contract out for nurses independently. And I'm asking if in this world, you can do that.
We could try, I think I'm on the same way.
Yeah.
I've done that.
And that we do have control who's in that position, you can interview.
I've done that in the past with speech people in the different
Yeah,
district,
of course.
and the same forces are at play. If we're not paying their insurance and all the benefits. and then all
Sure, the
that,
financial part, I just meant being able to
Yeah.
decide.
Yeah, I'm sure you-
Yeah, that is important, you know.
I never
Who's
thought
the-
about us putting out our own application for
Yeah.
some random person who might want to come along. I think right now, I don't think we had it, and we put it in a contract. We submitted it, we have it.
Thank you.
And maybe that was part of our process, to put it out there, if somebody might want to come.
Yeah, sometimes they do,
Yeah.
sometimes it's in their best interest.
Right, to be in their best interest.
Right, they might be on their spouses or.
Yeah.
they can go on.
If we put it out there, maybe we would get it.
So to put it out there, we have to have the position. Just going
Well, I
back
have
to
to know all the
this.
information
no,
before I
yeah.
make
They're
an
great
informed
questions.
Well,
decision.
They're great questions.
So, but keep in mind, what we're voting on here is simply to create the slot that we can put the person in. We aren't worrying about hiring the person or how much we're paying them at this point. We're just creating the slot that that person can be potentially filling. So right now, we're doing it by a service as opposed to a person. Okay? So, any further discussion about creating the opening? Seeing none. All in favor of creating the position of district physical therapist? All those opposed? All opposed. Motion carries.
Thank you.
All right. Director of Special Education.
Yes, so we had a committee of a board member and a principal and 2 teachers. We put this out a while ago. We had 3 candidates. We did all 3 of them. We also had an inside candidate, which was Stella, who's been our assistant director this year, and will be taking the rest of this, helping us out for the rest of this year, doing that position by herself until July 1st. We'll find another assistant. And the committee and I would like you to approve Stella doing as director of special education. Should be under a 1-year contract at the present salary that the other director had at $90,000.
I will entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Second. Go ahead.
So it was spoken to before that there was not the adequate training for Stella. She hadn't gone through all of the programs and procedures to be the director. Has that all been completed?
Yes, actually, Stella finished her certification and is certified as the director. The other director did not do.
But that was completed?
Yes.
Paul?
The purpose of this vote is going to allow you to hire a special.
No.
That person is still looking at as the director.
We're approving
Her
the
acting
director.
director.
Yeah. And the assistant director this whole year. The other director resigned.
And in July, we do the whole thing.
Well, we'll try to start with this after tonight. We'll start that process all over again.
Brian?
Who was on the committee?
It was Veronica, Laura, myself, Daniel Lieber, and Ken.
Thank you.
This is one of the most difficult positions to fill in the state. Stella has stepped in and done this for us. We all have a lot, we have some things to learn. She has some things to learn. She picked up the budget at the end of the process. She's developed relationships with the staff, and primarily with getting 5 to 6 staff. She's worked with the high school more often. With recommendations from some of the people that she's worked with this year.
We're offering her a contract till July. For us?
First, she's got to get us through the rest of this year, and then she's starting as your director, starting July 1.
all. You'll be the search for the assistant, this
Right.
person will be the director.
They just did
That's
the
correct.
search
Just did the search for the director.
for the director.
Having thought about the assistant.
We have done the search for the director. This person was hired.
She's in front of you right this moment in time.
I suspect so. And now we're looking for an assistant.
We would be looking for an assistant.
Okay. Money?
$90,000. $90,000. Just, I'll be able to stay there.
Even just fresh, with only the assistants, you mean?
What can we get an assistant for when we give one?
The assistant's paying getting around 80% of that, 70, 60, something, 68. They don't work full time.
So this person is now right up to snuff and ready to go?
The person you had last year was great at the same price.
I guess my point is are we getting a greenhorn for probably a director that has some better experience, and we don't know that because we haven't done a search?
We did.
They did do a search. They had 4 candidates.
I'm sorry. And I was,
And those other candidates, might they have the same or similar experience and qualifications that she has?
one had a year and a half, and one had more than that, and was not up to do on this job. I would say that the person did not do their full research on the size and the magnitude of our district. Didn't know what was number of IEP meetings, number of out-of-district placements, and some of those things we just didn't do their, just were not really prepared for this job. They work in a small district.
It's a 260-day
Yeah, full-time.
contract.
Full-time.
Go ahead.
I mean, just so we're clear, this money is already budgeted.
Absolutely.
It's not, we're not adding any more money. It's already there.
But we never take any away ever.
All right. Anyone else? All in favor of approving Stella as Director of Special Education? All opposed? Motion carries. There. Staff resignations are approved. Oh, sorry, AD, that's Athletic Director.
Is also involved with this process. Mary, you may want to help me out with what we had a fair number of candidates for this, both internal and external. I would say 15. I don't know.
Got about 15 candidates, really nice mix of some experienced people, some brand new people, some people that really didn't fit the job requirements with their application materials. Mr. Hammer, myself, Gene Crockett from the middle school, and selected Matt Brown, who's a coach and broadcasting person around athletics a lot, Bob Kreider, and Ryan Martin, our assistant principal. Interviewed 6 folks, then selected 2 finalists, which Ryan and I did a second round of interviews. Really good process, really tough, really good candidates to pick from. Just pleased with the amount of interest folks out there had in this role.
So we bring forward candidate Simon Elias. He's one of our internal candidates. He's been teaching social studies for 8 years. He's also picked up and done the spring sports for us this year. again, I was on the committee, there was some people who had, a couple had a vast amount of experience, but they weren't, it's kind of the direction that we were going with, was somebody like Silas.
If I could just add too, Simon's been really picking up things since winter season. Really just jamming the work in after hours, really without any fair compensation, and everything I have thrown to him, which has been increasingly like more. He's done a great job. He's really had a taste of all components of being an athletic director, from game day setup to scheduling, to working with the NPA, to learning about learning how to use this couple of unique software programs with management. In addition to the wrestling and track programs that are unique, we hosted the Northern Maine Regional Wrestling Championships. Simon was the point person on hosting that, so really got to see him in action with a large, complicated event. We've talked a lot about the budget side of it. He's even had a little taste of dealing with some sticky issues. In addition to us seeing, him having that experience, I got a really good look at what the future could look like. And I'm just impressed in having supervised him for 8 years. Impeccable character and ethics and values, outstanding work ethic, just a positive presence in our school community. And on the academic side, he's had 2 great leadership roles with outstanding feedback. Is the subject area leader, or had been the subject area leader for social studies. I know Lori Merrill just gave really positive references for him, and he's been serving as a social studies department chair. So he's really had a nice, robust range of experiences to showcase his leadership skills, navigating groups, organization skills. So I'm pretty excited about this next chapter of Nokomis Athletic Administration.
I will entertain a motion to approve Simon as our new AD.
So moved.
I'm looking at Paul, sorry.
You made a motion. All right. Any discussion?
The position that we've had in the past was athletic director and dean of students. Is this going to be the same thing?
I think that topic's come up a few times, like at budget meetings in the last few years, and I'm definitely going to date myself with my length here, but that original funding model happened when Nokomis, about 28 years ago, made the transition from a part-time AD to a full-time AD when Jim Boothby left and Julie Richards took the position. It was how it was funded to include, I think as our athletic director, certainly the priority needs to be to take care of athletics. And in that time, we've added a lot more sports. Athletics has gotten more complicated. The expectation from the community about some of the components of athletics, like it's a whole different ball game today versus 25 plus years ago. Certainly, we do rely on our athletic director to provide some backfill support between me and our assistant principal. But their primary focus is to make sure athletics comes off without a hitch. So I think really the part of that Dean of Students component really is how it's financed and supported from those cost centers.
So we no longer have a dean of students?
Not really. I would say those duties fall more to our assistant principal. And I think as roles have changed, and I think we've had more dynamic candidates, and I know some of you remember some of the, maybe you didn't think I was very dynamic when I was assistant principal, but, I think tried to change some of the duties. Like I know I took on more duties as assistant principal than historically had happened in that role. So I think that, we've had some nice growth with what the assistant principal role looks like too over that time. But certainly there are times we need our AD to be supportive of school day events, to assist us. We can have days where there are a lot of IEPs or other meetings and we need help. He has that certification of readiness. to step in and help, but it's more backfill versus a day-to-day demand, because it's almost impossible. Like, the schedule's crazy, and then when the weather interferes with it, like, it's just difficult to say, gonna be here every time at this day because of the nature of the work. But I think there's definitely some backfill from that position to support the building-based administration.
So that was no.
Well, it's like, I hate to say it's a complete no. I mean, we really don't have a dean of students position, but there are some things, like, we do look to our AD to help with.
So he's a teacher right now, moving to AD. Is he gonna finish out the year doing both, or are we gonna get him some?
Mary and I had that conversation this afternoon. We're not quite sure. There's a couple of days when there's a big track meet and softball games that we thought we would get him to be able to do that. Whether we can locate somebody who we felt confident to be in there for the rest of this year, we don't know. We didn't have that conversation.
Some potentially, he'll be involved.
Until you get on the square head. So,
Did you find it yet, Mike?
yeah, I got it. He does have his assistant buildings administrator and athletic director certification, and he is coming in at 74,000, which is lower than what which is lower than what we had budgeted.
Is that, you're part of the clinical superintendent, is that an average entry level athletic?
I would say it's below entry level. Not extravagant.
Anybody else? So, those in favor of approving signing on class as our athletic director? Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, staff resignations are there for our information.
Yeah, I want to just fill in this. I mean, if you're new to the board, you're going to see a lot of these right this time of year. And a lot of these people, and I'll be a broken record, can choose to go where they want to go. Some people, their spouse goes someplace else. Sometimes they want to go here. He's going to go to administration. Me was going to go with MCI. Catherine, I think, got a job in another district. Beth Widges is retirement, not that. Kristen Albert wants to become a zoologist, right? Or study zoo. And so, you know, a lot of these people, Luann's obviously retiring. So a lot of these people that you see on these lists are going to some other place, and then the ones that we're going to start to put back in on these lists are coming from places where they want to be here in RSU 19. And you've got two nominations tonight. There are two ed techs that have worked really hard to get their degrees within the district and paid for those degrees at some levels, maybe not, but you know, they want to go from being, you know, an ed tech into one of our teaching positions. So it's just, you just never know who's going where for it, but it's 9 times out of 10, it's a reason. You know, it was weird that Laura had 3 second grade openings, but it was just the way the cards fell. And then we had a good opportunity to go up and talk to some teachers at the University of Maine. We're getting ourselves out there a lot more. We did Maine Farmington, we did Maine Oreo. We try to go and recruit, and this is the way it is right now. The kids will come by you and they'll say, I don't want to be at Lisbon, and that's the table they go to, and that's who they talk to. You know, you see some kids from the county. They say, well, you know what the county is. I said, yes, I do know what the county is. I worked there for a while, and some want to stay there, and some want to come and be around the Orono area. Some of the people that we talked to said, oh, my boyfriend's going to be in the area because he's finishing his master's, and I know where Etna is, and so they may apply for Etna because they can stay there for 2 years while somebody finishes up. So it's definitely, there's a labor this because we got a lot of people, but there's lots in this market right now, and teachers can go wherever they want to go, and they leave us for a variety of reasons.
have we entertained, I know I brought this up last time, but the exit interview process to find out if they are leaving, what is the course of action that they're taking for leaving? Because it's great to say, I want to live in this area, but what is different from our area to their area? I think that's really going to open our eyes to make improvements in our district if you know that information.
Well, the last one wants to go to being doing, she doesn't do it, you know. It's not that, she's not expressing something to, you know, Laura, when you walk out the door that I didn't like you, or you didn't support me, it's all like you supported me. I appreciate that. I'm going to go with the board because that's where.
Well, and I understand that, but also when you complete an exit interview, it's not done with your direct report, it's done with human resources or someone in the office level normally. And there's more information that comes out of an exit interview when it's not from your direct person. I really think we need to look into that.
Yeah, I'll be that stuff, that, I think it's a good idea, I mean, you don't have to decide tonight, but, that is true, that's usually how it works, and sometimes you can do it, you could either do it in a survey form, you already get a lot, and you do get a lot of information, you might not know there was an issue, they might not feel comfortable, I mean, I know that sounds unadult, but people like that, so it could just be.
The board wants to go in that direction, I think we'll start at the education committee and figure out what questions we're going to ask, who's going to ask, who's going to do, what we're going to do with that information and stuff.
We might see a trend over time, and it's definitely.
Yeah.
Didn't we have a process for that anyway? Anybody remember? Didn't we kind of have an exit process that we spoke about?
We do, but it involves the direct supervisor.
That's probably, people don't want to burn bridges, so they're not going to be, as honest as they would be.
All right, so as I said, that's our information for those.
Can I just ask a quick question? Is there going to be a plan in the works for Latin?
We have that output that's been posted. I think we have 2 openings actually for language and for world languages. So see what we can get.
Okay, staff nominations.
Yes. So, let me look at the picture of that, but let's see if we can do it.
Sharing values.
Do a regulation.
Did AG?
Yep. These 2 are 2 special ed teachers in the life skills program, Mary and Sam, reviewed them, and their recommendations is to.
Okay, and so what we have, Robin, will make that. If you would.
I move that we approve the 2, what's it called, resolutions? I move that we approve the superintendent's nomination to employ Sherry Bowen and Denise Wilbur. Second?
Seconded.
Veronica.
Yep.
Oh, so, any further discussion on those? Seeing none, all those in favor of accepting the nomination of these 2? Any opposed? Motion carries. Staff transfers, again, are information.
We have F, probationary.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's right. Sorry. Probationary continuing contract teacher nominations. On the back of your packet, there is a list of these. So those of you who are new to the board, all teachers are hired on a 1-year contract, basically for the first 2 years that they're here. And so we have to, they are reviewed, evaluated, and then they are recommended for continuing contract in their first year, and the second year probationary teachers would be hired, would be off probation at that time, right?
I make a motion to approve the probationary and continuing contract teacher nominations as presented.
Second.
All right. Any discussion?
Are we taking both pages at once?
Yes. Seeing nothing, those in favor of accepting the second-year probationary and continuing contract teachers, please raise your hand. Any opposed? Motion carries.
I did, Katrina and Robin asked presented over the hands, appreciate that.
All right, so now we're into staff appointments, which again are informational for us. We had Karen Wilbur and Brandon Fuller and Andrew Gannon.
And what you got? You still lucky?
Oh, Whitney Gatfield.
Brandon Fuller, Whitney Guy, you're lucky, and Andrew Gannon, assistant football.
And then staff transfers are also informational. And we had, and you can see there, they're going, like Carissa's going from grade 2 to grade 3, Melissa's going to grade K to grade 1, and so on. Do you want to do the diploma requirements before you do the budget?
We can, so, Mary. Mary, do you want to do the diploma first, or do you want to prepare if it's after the budget?
Sorry, I couldn't hear you.
You want to do the diploma thing before the budget, or?
Love to.
Okay.
All right. So
I can say that this came forward because a young person sent me an email. It was very nice, very polite, and said, Mr. Newman, I'd really like to go with my class. I'm getting my DOE diploma versus what I'm not going to get the COMAS diploma. And I said I will discuss it with Mary, and I think we came back and said no. But I think it prompted more thinking on Mary's and my part, and so she put these two things together to discuss.
Yeah, it's not, the kind of question before you is not whether or not we're going to support kids who aren't going to make the finish line to get their DOE diploma. Like, we're going to pursue that. So the state has come out with this option, recognizing that the pandemic's created a lot of challenges for people, it's disrupted education. So the state is awarding their own diploma. And so the academic requirements are kind of that first section listed in blue. It's a total of 11 credits that kids need. They have to apply to the state. They need a letter from us and saying they've met those requirements, and we have to have some conversation to determine, like, was there a pandemic reason that interrupted their education? And the reality is, they've had 2 1/3 years of disrupted education. Everybody's going to be able to make a case. You know, if that's the pathway. So our guidance counselors have already started those conversations with students who, you know, with a month or so after graduation, are just not going to get to the COMAS finish line, but we want to help them move on to the next phase of their life to get that DOE diploma. So the question I have for you that's come up, and we got clarification, so this is the first time something like this has been offered, and so we contacted the DOE to find out, because the language says they have to have completed their 4th year. And so does that mean they have to wait until our very last day of school for us to send in the information? And then the question comes around, do we let students who are going to earn this DOE diploma participate in our graduation ceremony? Historically, our practice has been that only the students who have completed their requirements by whatever the date of June 10th is, and there have been some days we've gone, like, we're correcting stuff on graduation day. But everything's got to be done to participate in the ceremony. I'll give like a few, we do have the ability to award Nokomis diplomas till the end of the summer, and sometimes I've done private ceremonies with kids that finish later. We have students, you know, in the last couple of months of school realizing they're not going to get to the 22 Nokomis, swap over to adult ed, who has 2 fewer course requirements for their high school diploma pathway. The diploma they get through adult ed is a Nokomis diploma, but we do not allow those students who are completing under the adult ed umbrella to participate in the high school ceremony, to participate in the adult ed ceremony. And so this new kind of option is out there, and we've had a couple of students who are in line to pursue this pathway, and they've requested to participate in the high school ceremony. I just feel like that's a decision that needs to be made at this level, about how you feel about that. You know, it's not a Nokomis diploma they're getting. Like, we're not making up a diploma form. It's some document the state's going to come up with.
So it's just marching.
So it's
With
the
their
marching
peers.
and participation in our
With
ceremony
their peers
where we
that they've
award
been to school
diplomas.
with.
What's
Right,
that?
With their peers that they've been to school with, essentially for quite a while.
Right.
That's important, I think.
It's important, but we've also had so many kids not be able to do that and not be given this kind of opportunity to do that. And so I just feel like I'm torn in that sense because we've been pretty strict and not allowed everyone.
We're torn. I mean, I'm torn too. I think if this pathway were a little closer to high school requirements, I mean, this is half of what the other students are doing, and that really begs the question of like, now what about adult students that are finishing through adult ed, which is 2 off, which we haven't allowed to participate in the high school ceremony. They've got a separate one. You know, I do like, I mean, I generally like to have everybody invited to the party, you know, so it's like, it's tough.
So, my feeling is along those lines. I mean, all of these seniors that we have this year have worked through that 2.5 years of pandemic, and it sounds like most of them have accomplished the 22 credit hours that they have to graduate. I don't know the reasoning behind why these kids are going for this other thing, but I don't think it's fair to let them graduate with their class. I'm sorry, I don't. These other kids have worked their butt off to be able to have that ceremony. I don't know. I don't like the idea of it if we're not going to allow kids doing adult ed and other programs to get passed through and be able to participate. I mean, this is another program.
I would say, though, that it doesn't have any effect on those students who are receiving a Nokomis diploma. I mean, how is that going to affect them? And it's not really their business about other students. I don't know. And we don't know someone's situation at all. Do we want to go case by case? We could.
Dave, is this only going to be temporary for this time slot?
Next school year, next cohort of seniors too, the window, actually, it might actually be the sophomores, because it says all students who attended high school in Maine during the COVID-19 civil emergency from March 2020 to June 21 are eligible to apply. So I'm assuming it's going to be a couple of years. And I'd say I did meet with our guidance and department chairs to kind of take a temperature with them, how they felt about this. It was mostly a no to not participate. I think there were some concerns about, you know, our kids next year, seniors, going to mail it in on the homeless requirements. If they can do this, I think it would be hard for them to justify they've had a pandemic issue next school year. It could create some messes. I'm really happy you guys are deciding this, because probably every 4 or 5 hours I flip-flop because I see both sides of it. So I'm really pleased to let you make this decision.
I think it's important that we stick with the original Nokomis diploma requirements. It's okay if these kids are getting a DOE diploma, but I would be concerned with watering down the kids for next year, you know, and seeing them just go ahead, heck, we can get this all on easy enough and still attend. And I say that as somebody who couldn't go to my trade school graduation because of financial obligations were not done, so I missed out on that. Yes?
I think it's important that we set the standard that all of these kids, regardless of what age level that they were in when they were during this pandemic, they're all held to that same standard of this is the work, this is what needs to be done. If they wanted to march with their peers, then they should have found a way. And I know that sounds really harsh, but I'm not about giving trophies to people that are not working for it, and I'm completely against this idea.
Mark?
So is it correct to understand that basically a DOE diploma requires half the work of being a Nokomis?
Yeah, I mean, you can see the requirements listed kind of on the blue side. You know,
Well,
for
it's
English.
half the math and science.
Yeah.
And 2/3 of the social studies. Same amount in English.
But when I see like 22 credits versus 11 credits,
Yeah.
and that work is happening at this high school,
Correct,
but half as much.
correct.
Melanie?
Does anybody know some of the circumstances to why this DOE diploma was created outside of what other significant circumstances that are the interruptions in education that came from COVID-19 that are different from a student dropping out of school and picking up at adult ed? Do you have any circumstances that this qualified for that made this possible? As reasoning not opposed to a kid just not working hard.
Yes, I mean, I don't know, like I can give you some general examples. Say, bigger answer is, you know, annually we're working with students that aren't going to make the mark, like pre-pandemic. They usually have good reasons to why, you know, life has just gotten in the way, whether it's just the circumstances they're living in or some hardships falling upon the family. Like, you know, I know, like one student I talked, you know, with about this, you know, is going to work, lives with a grandparent, has helped support them. You know, we also got to see with our seniors, you know, a year and 3/4 of normal conditions. I would say most of the students in this situation, school's tough. You know, it was tough for them before. We have a couple of students that, anxiety, you know, they've been doing okay prior. So there are a couple that the anxiety piece that just got triggered as a result of the pandemic. They're still in a kind of almost a state of paralysis. You know, I'd say each of them has a story. I think there's some merit, you know, to why they're in the situation they're at. I would say we have students who also face similar things that did make it. I mean, it's hard to like compare it. I feel like there's an individuality to everybody's situation. Like,
I think Jenny has had her hand up before me.
Do we have, like, do we have a large group of kids that wouldn't be getting the diploma this year?
it's a little bigger than normal, but not like we're not at a disastrous point. Like I think we were in the high 80s for graduation. You know, we kind of crested that 90% mark. I mean, we're probably going to be again in the, I would say, you know, mid to upper 80s. You know, I think every year there's just a group of kids that are disconnected from school. And I would say we're probably looking at this DOE thing piece, like 7 to 10 students. You know, I think, you know, if the decision is made to not go, like I would try to work with those students to do some sort of presentation. Like, I'm not even sure when we could actually get their actual diplomas. Like, you know, the DOE did say they would try to expedite things for us. But some of them, like, still have work to complete. Like, I'm not sure they're going to be done by June 10th still anyway, so it may be something we do in, you know, early July.
When you report your graduates, they're still not going to be reported as ours, right? Even though they get
No,
it.
they can, as long as they have completed by the time we upload our cohort data, they are going to count for us if they complete this pathway. So, like I said, the decision, like we're working hard to help the students that this is a good pathway for. Like we're making that happen. Like we said, let's like stop working on things that don't, you know, we need to meet this, and let's focus on what you need to meet it. You know, that question is around the participation piece. Are they going to participate in the ceremonies? We're going to do everything we can to support kids that can meet this threshold to kind of get their diploma to be able to move on.
So I'm feeling torn like Mary. I'm uncomfortable with the difference in the amount of credits. That said, I think it's important that we at least acknowledge that there are not equitable circumstances for every individual, and that these kinds of things are going to come up as a result of the pandemic. And the influence of the pandemic was very different for every person and family and student. And so I, with respect to also, I feel like those kids that worked for it, I think that there's a bigger conversation about whether or not they worked harder. Yes, they did earn 4 credits, and they are going to be celebrated for that as they should be, because that's really hard. But I'm torn, I guess. I think that not every kid has the same opportunities. Not every kid has the same pandemic household. So if this is what the DOE is doing, this is a very clear acknowledgement of how hard it was for some. So, and I think that it's also, just because they're marching, they're not getting the same diploma. So they're, you know, when they hit the job market, they're going to have this diploma and not a Nokomis diploma. So, and when I think of that, I think this is an experience that we're offering them, but we're not offering them our diploma. We're offering them this experience. And it's an important one if they take that experience as a window into what success looks like.
It's still graduation as credit as your comments.
Mr. Chair, I have a motion.
I make a motion that we allow only Nokomis diploma recipients, the Nokomis diploma recipients to march in this graduation.
Second.
So to that, what your question, so we're getting credit for that, but they are not getting a Nokomis diploma.
If they finish in time when we upload our cohort data, which usually is, you know, into the summer, so.
And they're finishing in time right now, is relying upon the DOE timeline?
No, we're relying on them finishing the coursework.
Okay, but yeah, I wanted to make sure, because as you said, if the DOE is trying to like put this together and it's.
I mean, in just terms of like, did they approve it or not? Like, I don't know how fast they're gonna be. So if we send in the information, like, is this gonna be a few days or a few weeks before we get confirmation from them, their diploma application has been approved?
Chairman, I'd like to modify my motion to state only Nokomis diploma requirements recipients.
I think we understood that.
Okay,
So it's not quite the same thing, but community college, we have students who graduate with certificates, we have them graduate with the associate's degree, we have students who graduate with all the different credentials, but when they walk the stage, it's announced what they're getting, exactly what they're getting. You know, it's, I don't know that that's an answer. But I will commit that if the motion carries and we decide to do a separate ceremony for these DOE, I will commit to be there beside you with it.
What's that?
I will commit to be there beside you with them when they get it, if we do a separate ceremony. Brian?
I actually didn't understand. Can you say in one sentence what the motion is?
So I make a motion to have only Nokomis diploma recipients march in graduation.
Thank you.
Had your hand up at any point?
Yeah, I'm good now.
Okay.
Chris, because I personally know one of the students, I'm going to recuse myself from the vote.
Is this DOE diploma going to be the same as a GED?
No, it's considered a high school diploma. You know, we talked to our guidance counselors, This is new, so people are trying to figure out some of the wrinkles. I believe that the community colleges have made a commitment to accept this as a high school diploma, but I think if there were students looking to get accepted at four-year colleges, they may run into some difficulties because a lot of colleges require, particular assortment of courses. Like, it says they only have to have one lab science. Well, if they have lab biology, you're required to have lab, chemistry, or only 2 years of math. It may, that could just be algebra 1 and geometry. They have required algebra 2, so I think that, there might be some additional work. They would have to seek, coursework they'd have to either pick up through an adult ed class to get accepted to a college. They can't, if they apply for the DOE diploma, they can't then kind of come back to try to get a Nokomis diploma. Like, it's done. Like, you're considered a high school graduate.
I think I would be more important if it was 1 year, but the fact that other years can apply for this, I just see a couple juniors like, we're done.
But I think we're talking freshmen could do that, correct?
Right. So I feel like it would be a long, 1 year, maybe, but for multiple years, I just feel like we're kind of going down a slippery slope of that number growing of kids not using the time.
So let me ask you if I'm Mary, in 2020, when we went out in March, did we waive any of the hours of community service for that?
No, and honestly, that first year, by the time we get to March, most seniors have completed everything. Like, they're just in that final stage of those classes. So that actually was, with the impact of that first year, was the loss of experiences more than academic. Last year's group had more of an impact. I would say this senior class is probably been the worst, like the toughest. They've had the longest stretch.
I was just going to piggyback off what Jenny said, because I'm in that same boat. I was thinking if it was just because this is the year class that I would think would have most struggled. They certainly had the most up against them. But we're setting precedents now for the next 3, well, at least 2 years graduating classes that, really, I could see a lot of kids just saying, I'm going to take 11 credits compared to 22. Especially if I get to
COVID PTSD.
But especially if you get all the bells and whistles of just being able to graduate with your class anyway. I don't know.
Well,
I think this is, there's a number of reasons this is absolutely no good. First of all, every student had equality to get our requirements. Equity has no play in it. Equity is a dangerous word. Equality we all believe in, I believe. So this will be another case of equity. It didn't feel good some mornings, whatever. Also, obviously, water's down by 11 credit hours. And don't forget this element. The DOE, the almighty government, has taken away our local control to control our diploma for our school and with respect that the kids can march. And, that alone right there should shut everybody down. We are the guider of this, not the DOE. If we let the DOE run away with this little piece, the next little piece, God only knows where they're going to be. And we're providing a disservice to the kids that work hard to give them some watered down thing. And they're going to go through life with an asterisk, a blue asterisk next to this. This thing should die on its face.
anybody? Ryan?
I guess, yeah, I actually agree that I'm in favor of the motion, but a lot of that is just ridiculous. So I just want to say that out loud. Equity is totally different from equality. Celia just defined it very well. There are a lot of kids who don't have the same opportunities through no fault of their own because of their parents' socioeconomic status. So anyway, I just wanted to put that on the record, but I agree with the motion.
If we keep making excuses for them, Ryan, we're going to water them down forever.
Go ahead.
If this hadn't come into play,
would those students be able to graduate?
With
their class. With their class, with a high school diploma.
I mean, I have to I think there are a couple that maybe
If they
could
busted their
have
butt.
pulled it out, but most of them no. Like they would either be shifted into adult ed or would have to really put effort, because even when every year we have kids that don't make it, we continue to work with them through the summer. Or they come back the fifth year.
And what about last year's graduating class, because they had absolutely zero senior year? Did you see a lot of the same, I'm asking for numbers.
Yeah, no, there was some, and honestly, last year was not really like a complete dumpster fire. Like, we went through March, we were in person all year in 2 half cohorts, and then in March brought everybody back. So, there was quite a bit of in-person, the remote part definitely was, I might be in that dumpster fire. Everybody did their best with what it was, but I think things moved back to more typical.
But are you seeing similar numbers between last year and this year, or more this year?
I think a little more this year. I wouldn't say there's a drastic, trend line difference, but, 2020 was pretty typical, a little bit of a dip last year. We'll probably have a little bit more of a dip this year. And I anticipate we'll probably kind of go back up next year to about where 2021 was. It's just going to take us a couple of years to get back to kind of pre-pandemic levels, but we haven't had a radical drop.
Thank you.
I know I sounded harsh when I said what I did, but there's also students that didn't get the experiences like the 2020 students that we're now offering to people that didn't complete the work when the 2020 students did, and they were completely gypped, and we didn't do anything fancy for them. It literally was a minute and a half per student. And if you're going to do it for all of these people that have had challenges, then we need to go back for the last 2 years and redo it for everyone. So this to me is absolutely no.
All right, anybody else?
I guess I'll just ask my question while it's out here. So the 11 credits seems really low, but I hadn't really thought about how close are these kids that are considering it? Is there some other threshold that we should be, is there a modifier on our requirements we should be considering? And I'm not saying that's something we can figure out today, but it's, to me 11 versus 22 is a big difference, but if we're talking about, I don't know, 18 versus 22 or something, then that just seems like a different circumstance. Are these kids
I get
close, Mary?
so your question is, so they more than qualify for the DOE threshold, and they're just going to fall short of the Nokomis. I don't know how you have that. We're not awarding the DOE diploma, so we don't get to kind of determine that piece.
But I think, what you, I don't know if this is what you were asking, but if we have students, that are close, so are you saying some kids this year are getting the DOE diploma because they don't have 22, but they're at 19?
Well, that's what it said. I guess I
Right.
hadn't thought about that circumstance. Is that what's going on?
We'd have to go back and look at where everybody is and say, when we get kids that are with 1 or 2 credits, and especially if there are things in progress, we do put a full frontal assault on getting them to the finish line. We don't want to not graduate someone for 1 credit. I would say most of the people are probably closer to the 11 threshold than they are the 22 threshold. I'll go back and check though, because there might be a couple.
So one thing to keep in mind, we have a motion on the floor. The motion is about these 2 possibilities. It doesn't have anything to do with how close they might be. The thing to keep in mind is we do still have an entire budget to get through and all of the signatures to do. So we're going to be here a while. Ryan, you got something to add?
No, and I guess I sit here and hear, and I understand, I can understand what everyone is saying. I think, is it Celia? Not Cecilia, okay. I thought what you said was really well said. But at the same time, I sit here and I hear people really, I understand the concern, like, clearly, the Nokomis diploma is worth way more than the DOE. And we all know that, we all agree with that, and we all think it's kind of silly that the DOE did this all the way to a sophomore could do that when they get to a senior. I get that, I totally understand that. And when they get to adult life, that's gonna affect them somehow, whether they wanna go to school or get a job, or, well, maybe not so much a job now anymore, but we're talking about kids marching with their peers, and it's like, at the end of the day, why, I guess I'm trying to understand why that's so important for them not, but why is it so important for them not to when I was a high school senior, if this kid was sitting next to me, I never would have thought anything different of the fact that I'm getting this Nokomis diploma and they're not. My thought would have been like, get me the heck out of here, I can't wait, I'm going away to college, I'm going to be free. That was on my mind. I don't know, that's just my thought and my two cents.
Anything new to bring up? Would you read the motion again, or state the motion again, so that we can be refreshed?
So the motion is to allow only Nokomis diploma recipients to march in this graduation.
All right, so we're clear on the motion. All those in favor of the motion? Just check. Susie?
Yeah. Susan. Susan.
All right. Good. So the motion does carry, and here's your decision.
Thank you for your thoughtful deliberation.
Thank you for bringing it.
You do something like that. I know.
All right. That brings us to the 22-23 budget.
Yeah.
Consideration of the Budget Finance Committee's recommendation for the 2022-2023 budget. So, Joe, you want to run us through this?
All right. So this is an abbreviated presentation that done last night. We kind of went through a detailed one at a special budget meeting. But as far as on the presentation in front of you, as far as page 2 is kind of going through just kind of regrouping on the timeline. So the kind of budget process is a very long process. Starts back in December, January, with each of the buildings kind of starting to create kind of classroom level budgets. And then thinking about any positions, anything that needs to be created. And then kind of all the administrators, with Mike and I, we kind of go through each of their individual budgets, kind of make some adjustments there, and then ultimately starting kind of end of February, the budget committee starts to be every week, and all the way through March and into April, and kind of we kind of go through, the administrators come in and we just kind of talk through each piece of the budget, and then ultimately we kind of get to the point where we roll it all up, and then in April we're kind of going through and kind of seeing what that comes up to, what the impact is on the towns, and then we kind of And this process is kind of ended up whittling away and kind of cutting about $200,000 out of the budget from what was originally projected, and to get to the budget that we ended up with. So as far as that's kind of a timeline as far as where we came from and how we got to where we are tonight. As far as the budget that's being proposed is about $32.4 million in the kind of general fund, $40,000 for food service, and $130,000 for adult ed, for a total of a $32.6 million budget. Of that, about $19.5 million is state funded, where we're advocating to push $600,000, using $600,000 in fund balance to reduce the local funding, and then another $103,000 in miscellaneous revenue. And so the total local share budget is $12,355,000, and that's an increase of about 1.86% from last year. Moving on to page 4, just kind of looking at our current fund balance, and I'll just kind of draw your attention to the bottom portion of that page where we want to put $600,000 towards next year's budget. We're also advocating to once again have an article where we're increasing our capital reserve for potential projects, kind of things that come up as far as increasing that capital reserve by $500,000. And with the fuel instability, as far as for pricing on transportation fuel, heating fuels, we're advocating the creation of a fuel reserve and putting $100,000 into that reserve.
Got a quick question.
Yep.
The fund balance.
Yep.
It used to be, I know they were saying it was recommended to be 3%. The cap was much lower, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, basically, it's always, right, as far as up to this last year's legislation session, it was capped at 3%. And that's going, they've increased that to 5%, and for the next 3 years, it can go be as high as 9%. It's kind of the state allowance there, just to give districts extra cash flow as they're kind of dealing with still recovering, COVID-related items.
Thanks.
Yeah. Page 5 is just kind of breaking down the budget by articles. So as far as and this is how, when we have our district budget meeting on the 24th, how it's presented as far as the funding by each individual article for regular instruction, special education, career tech, co-curricular athletics, student and staff support, system administration, school administration, transportation, facilities, debt service, nutrition, and adult ed. And so, in total, the proposed budget is up about 3.57%. And then the next slide will kind of get into what's driving those increases. We have, as usual, as far as if you look at the district budget, about 71% of it is people costs. So that kind of is what drives our budget the most. So salaries and health insurance is about $1.5 million in increases. In the budget, we do have some new positions and then also some shift in positions. We have a elementary teaching position at Somerset, which is a newly created position due to class size and student population there. We have a Ed Tech 3 position at the Richmond School. We've created a new guidance counselor position at the middle school, and that's been kind of discussed already. We have a kind of a shift as far as we currently have a life skills teacher and a grant that we're shifting to local budget next year. We also have a position at the high school, it's a learning opportunity position that has been fully grant funded. Next year, 2/3 of that will be district funded, so that's an increase in personnel. We also created that half of maintenance position to help support in the maintaining of the facilities. We've also had a few shifts as far as because of funding levels with entitled and local entitlement grants, as far as we've had to, because of declining, well, basically what we can support with those funds, as far as we have to move a title position from the title grant into the local budget, and then for local entitlement, there's 2 ed tech positions that are being put into the local budget that was previously funded through grants. And we also, there was an elimination of an ed tech position at the middle school, high school library, just because of need after evaluating consolidations and one library in this building as far as need there. So that's kind of some of the key pieces in there. Health insurances are about 4% next year, and then just contractual wage increases. Other drivers that we're factoring in, as far as we're coming off some clean lockage, some very favorable heating pricing, as far as that expires at June 30th, and with the current market, we have built in some additional costs for heating and transportation fuels, and then other things there, supplies, repairs. One thing that is down in this budget, we have debt services decreased by about over $700,000, and that's due to we have now paid off the debt service on the West Bassett and Somerset buildings. So that debt went away this year. So the result, the vast majority of that was state funded, but there was $125,000 local debt that is no longer required this year. And so that's kind of the drivers as far as what's creating the increase in the budget. The next slide just kind of looks at the local assessments as far as this is based on state valuation, so this is how assessments are determined for each of the individual towns. And as far as what's driving, as far as any kind of change within what each individual town will be charged. And this is kind of probably the biggest piece as far as this year for the biggest towns in the past is Etna, Dixmont, and Palmyra, the three towns most heavily impacted. And then page 8, so just kind of looking at this individually by town. Like I said, overall in the district, it's up. We're asking for 1.86% more in funding, but that varies greatly by town, with, like, say, Etna, Dixmont, and Palmyra varying the biggest percentage increases, and particularly Etna and Dixmont, odds another piece there as far as 3 years ago we paid off an obligation bond, and we, for the last 3 years, as far as the percentage that we kind of, Etna and Dixmont were not part of that bond payoff, so as far as they were given credits over 3 years to kind of equal their portion of what that amount was, and that ended last year, so this year their increase is a little bit more just because that went away. So that's kind of the biggest pieces. But that's just the, like I say, the quick overview of the budget, and happy to kind of answer any questions that anyone may have.
Did you come up with that number from last night we were talking about?
We need a motion on the floor for us to discuss. I move to vote to call and approve the warrant for the budget meeting and the budget validation referendum, and to authorize the notice of amounts adopted. That the warrant of RSU 19 budget meeting presented to the meeting be approved, and that a regional school unit budget meeting be called for May 24th, 2022, for the purpose of voting on the annual budget for the regional school unit for the 2022-2023 fiscal year. That the warrant and notice of election for the regional school unit budget validation referendum presented to the meeting be approved, and that a regional school unit budget validation referendum be called for June 14th, 2022, for the purpose of approving the budget adopted at the regional school unit budget meeting for the 22-23 fiscal year, and considering whether to continue the budget validation referendum process, and that the form of notice of amounts adopted at the budget meeting presented to this meeting be approved, and that the superintendent of schools of the regional school unit be authorized and directed to complete said notice in accordance with the regional school unit budget meeting on May 24, 2022, and to cause copies of said notice as completed to be delivered to the municipal clerks of each municipality of the regional school unit for posting at the polling places for the June 14, 2022 regional school unit budget validation recommendation.
Second.
I remember.
We have a motion, we have a second.
Question, last time we were discussing the additional COVID dollars. Did you come up with a number on that or a close guesstimate?
We did not, as far as Mike and I did look at that today, so we're looking at average student cost as far as that's one of us looking at the general budget.
I have those figures. Our per pupil cost is $16,497. The state average is $18,020.
Did you add in the COVID monies for that? Because the budget's 32,606,208 is what it comes to.
I did not, because the COVID money is something that is not a permanent fixture, and it has, most of it is due to programming versus goes with each student.
I understand, but it still comes into the RSU, that's being spent by the RSU, and the RSU pays its educated children, so I guess that's what we'll have to do on that.
I think there's also a circuit breaker in there where we can't spend that money. People can't think that we're going to spend that money to offset anything once you think about that money in that way. If there's certain money that's set aside for programming that we have to work on, like it's $1 million, we can set aside more money. There's some of those things that are projects that have been set aside for the water project, for the ventilation project. So people think that that money can be in there to offset or to do anything. We don't want to put that out there because the districts who put a lot of this money into their budgets, and they're going to be in trouble on the other side because they spend so much of their money, to offset that. So yes, we've been confused with a whole bunch of money. But start putting it as far as our pupil expenditure, I think people were spending this astronomical amount of money above and beyond the state average. It would be dangerous, I think.
Are all of these projects that are happening with the COVID money, are those going to be complete when that COVID money's gone, or are these now going to have to be worked into the next budget because they're still ongoing?
We're watching each one of those grants as it comes to an end and making sure that we're spending that money. We're going on to the next grant, and those grants go up to 2023 and 2024. So we're not going to have a continual project that we started in with COVID money into the regular budget. Now people might be that you're going to have those conversations come back to you because people have done these positions and these grants, and is that kind of so this board will decide to retain those positions or not. Right. That would be where the run comes.
Any other questions? Anybody involved?
With the, you might have labeled something different when you do additional money for each town to make the budget work. I don't know, is that the last page?
The last page has the, correct, as far as the assessment of the town, assessment.
Right, but a lot of times if we don't meet all our, it's been a while since I've been on the budget committee. We don't meet our obligations, and we have to ask the town for additional money to make it.
Well, as far as, they said, as far as all the revenues, so this is, everything we ask for the local is the dollar value that we need to match our expenditures. So as far as, we cannot spend more money than the voters authorized to spend, and this is the revenue to match that. So we should not, there should be no need to, let's try about the local additional, is that what you're asking?
Mark just showed it to me, I think it was on that page, it's about different classes, yes.
Fine.
What
is the physical procedure that happens when one of the towns is negative?
As far as, well, all that, I mean, as far as all that means, what this year, what we'll assess them this year is slightly less than last year. So it just means, of course, when once the budget's fully passed, we kind of send out assessment sheets to the towns, and just the dollar amount that they'll pay us monthly next year will be just slightly less than what they paid us this year.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we have approximately 13 minutes left. I will entertain a motion to extend our meeting to 30 minutes while we finish discussing and signing.
We can hurry.
15 minutes, all right. Okay,
If Dave said 15, I'll second that.
okay, fair enough. Dave? All right, all those in favor of extending the meeting? Any opposed? Motion does carry. All right. Any further discussion on the numbers or allocations in the budget? Can you summarize the motion, please?
No, I'm not going to.
All right, hopefully you remember that motion. Keep in mind that in your thing, this actually deals with both the consideration of the budget, which is the numbers, the approval of the district budget meeting and validation dates, which are May 24th through 14th, approval of the warrants, and then for the budget meeting and the validation referendum, and then we have to sign the warrants. So even though we take the vote, please don't disappear, because you've got a cramping number of signatures to do. All right. Those in favor of the budget as presented, please raise your hands. Very good. Any opposed? One opposition. All right. So we will start passing the signatures around.
Sign on the.
Pens up there?
Yeah, pens here.
Yeah, say that again. Right.
You make that mistake 1 year and they don't want you to do that, right?
Oh, you're a nice guy. One of them.
I mean, it looks fantastic.
But yeah, it's good. It's much better.
I did, I almost.
Back, you turn off the camera?
We're done.
Nobody shut it off?
Yeah.
By all means.
Yeah.